Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Thursday, June 26th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. It's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life, most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. From that webpage, you can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again, absolutely free. You can also download from that webpage a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go on to your App Store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope you do all of those things soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, you can send me an email at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. It's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred. If you're able, you can join us live through Zoom. If you go to zoom.us, it'll give you a whole host of phone numbers you can use to call. Once you call in, you type in the show ID or the meeting ID number, which is 853-2357-4173. And if you need a refresher for that, you can go to mindshiftersacademy.org website, and it's listed there as the Zoom invite with a whole bunch of different numbers you could call, or you can open up a web browser and type in zoom.us and type in this meeting ID, 853-2357-4173. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody chooses to do that, to join us live or send us an email, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that is just boatloads easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. Tonight's a Thursday night, so there will be a support group available tonight from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central Time. And again, all the information you would need to join us for that is available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website. So we have plenty of time for comments and questions. Feel free to raise a hand and ask a question, or make a comment. And in lieu of anybody doing that here in the
Dr.
next,
Tim,
yes.
I have a quick, or maybe it's not so quick, I don't know. I've noticed on the internet, there are predictions that we are reaching a stage when we are going to have the apocalypse. Or there's one that says July 26th, which I think is today, that we are something big
Well,
is going
this
to
is
happen.
June
Oh,
26th.
that's right. Sorry. I think it said June 26th. Anyway,
Okay.
I forget. It doesn't matter. All they're doing is, I remember seeing cartoons when I was small of people walking with signs saying the end is near, all this business, and it's happening again. What do you think about all that?
Well, I don't think about it too much because it just keeps happening. It's been happening for hundreds, if not thousands of years in our human existence. I remember just out of college reading a book about how the end of times predictions were flying fast and furiously when there was an eclipse back in
Mm,
the 1800s and then in the 1900s, and it just keeps happening every time there's a major cycle change or event, or a meteor comes, or um, a comet comes by, or there's an eclipse. That's what we do. We try to make sense of the universe with this 9-bit mind, and so we spin tales.
yeah, well, a variant of that is I hear people saying we are gaining consciousness. We are reaching a stage where we will be different. Is that's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
It seems very similar to me. It seems as though, I have I'm no stranger to these kinds of things. I did for an entire year. There was somebody that I respected, and he said, "This is this fabulous breath technique." And so for an entire year, I paid a significant amount of money to me and drove an hour one way to
Ah,
get to this breath thing once a week for a year.
wow. Yeah.
And the claim from the breath technique is that this is what's going to have us as human beings evolve to a higher level of consciousness.
Hmm.
This breath technique is going to activate blah, 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 on and
Right.
on and on. And so I'm not immune to those things. It's not like I've never heard of them. I just have seen so many come and go over the years that I don't bite anymore. I don't go chasing it. I'm I'm content at this stage of the game to keep working with the tools I've learned and the philosophy that makes the most sense to me, which is it doesn't matter what's happening with humanity. What matters is what I'm doing inside my own mind body energy system, because that's what I have control over. Like, you've heard me quote from Abraham numerous times, your most important creation in any moment is your emotion in that moment.
Mm.
So in this moment, what can I contribute to the flow of life and creation? I can create my emotional state. Do I want to contribute an angry, bitter, scared, hurtful emotional state? Or do I want to contribute a balanced, loving, compassionate, expansive emotional state?
Right. Well, I think the last step of this is Michael Rice is talking about critical mass. And I love to think that we could be heading in that direction and tip the scales and whatever it is. But I wonder if that is the same category as those other things.
Well, it all depends on the meaning that the individual gives it. Right? If I'm sitting here with an assessment of the world that says it's damaged and broken and it needs me to do X, Y, or Z thing to save it, then I'm going to create one set of experiences for myself. But if I'm sitting here just really trying to live in the question and ask on a regular basis, what's mine to do to grow, to be more loving in more and more challenging circumstances, then I don't worry about the predictions about end of times, and because I don't have control over that end of time
Mm,
stuff. I do have control over what am I doing with my mind energy in this moment, and am I using it to generate fear, or am I using it to tap into my true nature and remove everything that's unlike my true nature with the application of tools or what have you?
mhm.
That's all I keep coming back to.
Well, that seems smart and safe to do that. It also keeps us from making a judgment. And what you said, it's all up to how we are looking at this. Now, if Michael says we are approaching critical mass, I could say, well, you're saying that because you think the way we are now isn't so good, which is a judgment. Or it could
Yes.
just, yeah, okay. So anyway, that's,
Yes.
yeah.
Right. It's a yes, yes, and yes. That one of the things that drew me to Krishnamurti's work back in the 80s was that he was the first person. I'd read quite a few different spiritual things, but he was the first person that I'd read from as a spiritual teacher that just never had the inconsistencies. Right? We've talked about the inconsistencies. Like Guy Finley will talk about how, look at how angry you are. Look at, have you ever snapped at somebody? Have you ever barked at somebody? What is all about it? What is it? And then now he's yelling at the audience. He's literally,
Yeah.
he's saying we must actively steal from ourselves every excuse to be negative, bitter, etc. And then he gets angry and he gets
Hmm.
agitated. You don't know
Hmm.
what you're missing. You don't know what you're doing here. Look at you, etc. So
Mm.
that Krishnamurti was the first person that I read his writings and followed his work where he never went back on it like
Yeah.
that. He just said, look, watch your thought. See how your thought tries to convince you that it's got the truth
Yep.
and that it is true.
Right.
And you'll begin to understand what Krishnamurti and David Bohm both had tapped into, which is that there is a fundamental flaw in our process of thought as it applies to our mental and emotional lives. And so the actual thought process itself creates the pain and suffering that we experience, and then it tells us, I know what the answer is. Guess what the answer is? More thought.
Hmm. Yeah.
And the very thing that brought about the pain, the negative emotional state, the fear, the overwhelm, the very process that brought that into being now tells you it's got the solution. Just do
Hmm.
more of it.
Yeah.
If you can just come back to that, if you can just understand that anytime your mind is serving up something that's tight, tense, bitter, angry, hurt, overwhelmed, stressed, whatever your mind is telling you in that moment is a lie.
Mm.
And if you can put that on a worksheet to figure out how that particular pattern of thought is connected to the upset you're experiencing and you cancel the goal, and it's powerful beyond words.
Mm.
And if you're willing to do that, as opposed to chasing thought structures about your life and critical mass and saving the planet and on and on and on, those are just thought structures. Those are just complex webs of supposed relationship that are often just made up.
You did you study with, I know you interviewed Guy Finley, right? Don't you have one of your Journey
Yes.
Stream
Yes, he had
things?
written the book Relationship Magic,
Okay.
and there's an interview available with him, and it was on the Mind Shifters radio. It was on a 11 o'clock hour like this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean that was when it first
It,
happened?
I mean, it wasn't a Journey's Dream on Your Mind podcast.
I see.
It was
Okay.
this.
Okay. The way the Christian Sunbird thing is going to be. Yeah.
Yes.
So, did you ever study with him separately? Because you went to see his retreat center. Had you been there before?
No, I had not been there before. I have been watching his talks for probably close to 20 years.
Wow.
And for about 15 years, I've brought his talks into the rotation of things we play and teachers we listen to on audio and video in the support groups.
Oh, I see. Had you had you ever met him before you had him on the radio show?
No,
Okay.
no, I just, took a chance when I heard that he was releasing a new book. I took a chance that he might be willing to do an interview, and they said yes.
Great.
And so we have it on record. It's recorded and it works. People can listen back to the playback. Why do you ask if I've met him before or studied with him or whatever your other
Well,
question
you
was?
said you had had this fantastic trip, and you couldn't even put it into words. And I wondered whether going there was part of the wonderfulness
Yes,
of
but it
it.
wasn't, you see, for me, one of the things that makes those trips so beyond words good is going into them relatively free of expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever unfolds is just perfect. How can I know it's perfect? Because it happened. And so the off the charts um, positive aspects of that trip had to do with how beautifully and synchronously the connections went between myself and two of my former high school classmates, my traveling companion's cousin, one of my uh, very good friends through graduate school. The way those things fell together, the way the weather was just perfect, the way that whatever disruptions happened in the travel, we didn't get upset about it. We just said, well, okay, so that's happening. How will we do, what's our next best choice with this? Just wonderful. And of course, I love that part of the country. As I mentioned before leaving, uh, I loved it so much. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done to leave there. And the only way I could get myself to, leave there was to promise myself I'd go back often and take vacations there and introduce my kids to the backpacking lifestyle up in those gorgeous mountains. But that was my plan. But this was the first time I'd been back in 45 years. So to have everything go that smoothly, just wonderful. And of course, tapping into going to see the actual compound, you might call it, in Merlin, just outside of Merlin, Oregon, or in the town, was lovely just because I've watched it on videos for so often, and I didn't have a sense of um, the environment that it was in, and I didn't have a sense of, the hands-on experience with the people. So it was lovely to be there, and it was full of sadness for a lot of people because Patricia and Guy have decided to move to Florida. And so there have been people who've been helping them run that foundation for 25 plus years who are very sad that it's coming to an end. So there's all the emotions about, an end of an era that, and the other thing that dawned on me after the experience was that it was a lot like when I finally went to see, oh, what's his name? What's his name? He wrote Pulling Your Own Strings and Your Erroneous Zones, Wayne Dyer. When I finally went to see Wayne Dyer late in his career, um, in person, I walked out of there thinking, yeah, I wish he would have said it this way. I wish you knew this piece. I wish So we were lockstep in our development over the years because I would read his books and buy his CDs. And so I watched his development from this very pedestrian psychologist to a more charismatic pop psychologist to a spiritual teacher. And I watched and listened as he grew and he changed his focus and he learned different things. And by the time I went to see him, I thought, yeah, he's really kind of caught up in his ego and maybe he's past his prime. And I just chuckled at myself thinking that about him, right? Because um, the guy's made many, 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 many millions of dollars and he's affected many millions of lives globally because of all of the programs and books. And here's me sitting back assessing his teaching. It's kind of funny. And that was kind of, the same kind of an experience I had when I finally got to go see Guy Finley, was that it's he's just another person. And thankfully, because I found in a couple of his books where he had a footnote that referred to Krishnamurti. And I thought, aha, I knew that we had more than just one or two pieces of source material that were the same. And so, what Krishnamurti would say every single talk, multiple times every talk, Guy Finley, I only hear him say it once every 10th or 20th talk. And that is, I hope you don't think this is coming from me. I hope you don't think I have all the answers. And that's just one of those aspects of the Krishnamurti talks that just really resonates with me. There's this wide open understanding that the individual human being is not what's special. It's the ability to observe the flow of life better, and it's the ability to observe the role of ego in its fear-based origins and its stuckness. It's that that contains the magic, not the human being who's open to learning about it. And so, with enough practice, we get to take people off of pedestals and we get to lift people out of the pits, including ourselves. And we understand that we're all in this same game at the same level all the time. If you're in a body, you're playing the same game at the same level as everybody else. And if you're thinking, oh boy, that person plays the game at a whole different level, that's a distortion. It's like
Can you tell me, I don't agree with you there. So can you tell me more about that?
you don't agree with me about what?
About that it's the same level. It's the same game, but I don't agree that it's the same level.
Okay. Okay. So now
I'm just
before we
curious.
start talking about that,
Yeah.
let's just understand that what we're doing is using words,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the meaning I have
Yeah.
for the phrase, we're all playing at the same level, may not be the same as what the meaning you have for that, right?
Exactly. That's why I'm asking for
And
clarification.
and notice the energy you had for that. I don't agree with that, right? So
Yeah.
it's perfectly okay We just want to tune into what's the energy going on in us around these thoughts or reactions that we have.
Yeah.
And so to begin with, help me understand what it means to you, what you think I mean when I say we're all at the same level.
Well, I'd prefer it the other way. I'd like you to tell me what you meant by it, and then I'll let you know if it aligns with what I'm thinking.
I asked you first.
Yeah, but because you brought it forward, and so I wanted because you
Okay, so what I'm saying is that in this ultimate sense, right, not in terms of our physical, clearly there's a big difference between your physical appearance and my physical appearance, etc. And that'll change dramatically based on who's doing the perceiving.
yes.
So some people will perceive me as handsome and others will perceive me as XYZ. So this idea of at a fundamental level, it's like what I think in the Christian Sundberg writing, he keeps using words like fundamental. What is fundamental about you? What is absolutely true at a base level? And what I'm saying when I'm saying that we're all playing this game at the same level is that you began as a sperm and an egg, and you're in this physical. You're not just the protoplasm. You're the energy field that gave rise to this thing that we call matter, that is the body, and we're all just part of the same, divine mind, spark, whatever you want to call it. That's what I mean by we're all at the same level.
Okay,
Now,
so when you say this, to help me understand then the same game. So what I hear when you just said that, that's the same game. That because we're all born here, we die here, we all have experience in this human construct that was made up by the collective.
well,
So we
that,
all have these,
that, that,
yeah,
and the non-physical,
yes,
we're all the same at that non-physical level.
yeah.
Now, why am I saying it? I'm saying that because I don't know, Susan, how familiar you are with the Way of Mastery. Are you familiar with the Way of Mastery?
No, I'm not at all, actually.
Okay. I tell people, look, the Way of Mastery is like a kinder, gentler version of the Course in Miracles.
Okay.
Sound good? Why do
Yeah,
you say that? Why do you say that? Well,
yeah.
because ostensibly it's channeled from the same entity of consciousness. It's Yeshua, etc. It was channeled from 94 to 97, whereas Course in Miracles was channeled from the mid 60s to the late 60s. So it holds together differently. But then they say, why do you say it's kinder and gentler? So I say this, look, first two paragraphs from the third lesson, The Way of Mastery. If I search the languages of your world, I cannot find the words that can convey the love that I feel for you. I cannot find the words that can convey unto you the capital L love that God has for all of us. I cannot find a concept, a word, an idea, a philosophy, or a dogma that can contain the mystery that is closer to you than your own breath and awaits your discovery. If I search throughout all of creation, if I search through the many mansions that exist within the domain of my Father's creation, and that creation is infinite, try as I might, I cannot discover anything that can truly describe you. In truth, I cannot discover anything that speaks more eloquently than the love that God is, than your very existence. Therefore, in truth, I look upon you constantly and marvel at the radiance of my Father's love. It is through you that I come to discover all that the Creator is. All that God is the way it's written in this book. Now, that's just one example I use about to tell people, hey, look, it's a kinder, gentler version.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the beginning of almost every chapter, there's a little intro, there's a little welcome. And it says in the fourth lesson, it is with great joy that I walk with you on the way that you have chosen. And over again, he says, brother and sister. And so then we get to the sixth lesson, and it says, look, indeed, greetings unto you, beloved and holy friends, period. And then the very same words are put in italics, and it says, indeed, greetings unto you, beloved and holy friends. And then it says, if you understand the meaning of this greeting, if you comprehend the depth of each term used, you already know all there is to know, and you are well prepared to extend the love of God or the love of creation forever. Indeed simply means there aren't any other options. Greetings unto you means salutations to the capital O-N-E, one created of the Father before all things. For I, Yeshua, bow down before your radiance. That's what I mean when I say we're all playing the same game at the same scale. Any idea that I have that I'm further along in some spiritual path than anybody else is just my ego trying to pump itself up.
Yeah. So how would you describe then? Because there are many people here, and I'm talking about the states of consciousness. And some have, and if I don't want to look at it as a hierarchy, I want to look at it as a heterarchy. But some people have a more expanded state of seeing what's going on. Some people are collapsed in fear. That is a way of perceiving the world. They're trapped in their own mind. Other people have the awareness, and the masters, the teachers that exist here, including yourself, Dr. Rice, Byron Katie, I could name many that, Eckhart Tolle, and they come at it from different ways, but their states of consciousness are, I would want to say, are have more awareness, I would say.
Yes, and that's not what I was referring to.
Yeah. Okay. And so,
I'm referring, so it's like Guy Finley says, hey, look, everything is in scale. And so at a certain level of scale, if you were in this room right now, I'd say, hey, look, I've got a hand and it's solid and I could clap hands with you and we're separate and I see you walk out of the room and we're separate. But at another level of scale, we're not separate.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the level of scale I was talking about is just a broader, deeper,
You're up
from the
here
beginning of
talking
time.
about same game.
It's just a statement that ultimately everything my mind tells me about how I'm more advanced than somebody else is just a trick of my mind.
Yeah.
Now, at
Absolutely.
another level of scale, have I read The Way of Mastery more than somebody that just read through it once? Yes. Can I say these words in a way that tend to flow and seem to make really good sense? Yes. Does that mean I am any further along any spiritual path than anybody else? No. Right?
No.
Because the test for that is when the rubber meets the road and the conflict is high, what Michael Rice says, when the stress is up and the chips are down, right? When, as Stuart Wilde says, when I get back in touch with my family of origin, right? When the real stuff happens, right?
That's,
Then I don't have the same level of, you might call it mastery or facility with the tools, because I can get as triggered as anybody else.
oh,
And that same thing is true from my experience with every person I've ever met, whether somebody else called them a spiritual teacher or they called themselves a spiritual teacher or I thought of them as a spiritual teacher, doesn't matter. The clay feet are always there.
yeah, you helped me this discussion. Thank you so much, because I'm doing the Gene Keys. I'm Richard Rudd's work. And there was one piece where he talked about epiphany. And epiphany was an inner manifestation, is how it was referenced in one of the Gene Keys. And then he said, it's a big difference for those that move into divine experience, ones that are being it, and then one just having the manifestation of it. And I can see now how ego creeps in because we're all playing the part and it's all on equal ground. Everybody's part, we don't know what, it's all equal. Yeah, that you helped me to see that. And thank you also for pointing out the charge because the charge was definitely there. Now, what that is, I don't know exactly what that is, but I'll have to do a worksheet. And you might have alluded to it by the term in the Course in Miracles of wanting to be special, right? There's an
Right. And here's this, I think it's in the first or the second lesson with, and I've read this before here. This I told myself I wanted to make sure that I had it. Okay, so here's this right in the first lesson. Right, you just mentioned the Course in Miracles said something about wanting to be special. It says, "You will discover that the pathway of awakening is not a pathway of avoidance, but a pathway of truthfulness. It is not a pathway of accomplishment and pride, but it is a pathway of releasing from the consciousness every hope and every wish to be special. Actively looking for my hope and my wish to be special and dismantling them."
That's going to be a great worksheet, a few of those.
No special. And then just a minute, let me just finish reading that to you. It says, to see yourself as having made progress. You give up any sense of seeing yourself as having made progress so that you can then, because if you've made progress, you can pound your fist on your chest and spread your tail feathers and say how wonderful you are. Or you can say, oh, I hope this is going to help me earn my way into heaven, so that God might say, oh, you've been such a good person. We will allow you into the kingdom now. Give up every sense of that. Well, I know several people who put this book down because that was niggling at them. Because why would I do all of this work if it's not going to make me better than somebody else?
Yeah, that's not my intention for sure.
And I've had people who've come into the support groups before who've had that same kind of energy that you just had in that, because I made a statement and the meaning you had for that clashed with something you were holding, and the intensity of the emotional response we have for something is a direct warning to us about how we're over identified with that thought or belief.
Yeah, thank you so much. I didn't, my reaction immediately, and it just tripped into my limbic brain there without even having awareness. So thank you. I appreciate you holding the space and then also giving me giving opportunity to see it differently with new eyes.
Well, and there's a quote, I'm trying to flip back through things I had saved. There's a quote from a great mind about how the more we get angry when someone challenges one of our thoughts or beliefs, the more that tells us that we are not absolutely certain about that thought or belief.
Yeah, okay. Oh.
If
Oh,
someone were to say to you, hey, look, Susan, I saw you made this math mistake here. You said 2 + 2 is 4. It's not 4, it's 17.
yeah.
Would you argue with that person?
No.
Why? Why would you not feel upset or argue with that
Well, in
person?
this illusion, 2 + 2, in the imaginary world, it might be a different number, but in this world, 2 + 2 is 4. I know it. It's a knowing.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about that you might be wrong,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And in this quote, he talks about how the vast majority of these big, intense arguments with people are about things that can't be known one way or another. So they're religious or they're philosophical, etc.
Got it. And who is the person that said the quote?
I'm trying to find it here. I've read it on the internet show here before. It's one of our great minds from the past. Here it is. Bertrand Russell. From an outline of intellectual rubbish of 1943, he writes, If an opinion contrary to your own makes you angry, that is a sign that you are subconsciously aware of having no good reason for thinking as you do. If someone maintains that 2 and 2 are 5, or that Iceland is on the equator, you should feel pity rather than anger, unless you know so little of arithmetic or geography that his or her opinion shakes your own contrary conviction. The most savage controversies are those about matters as to which there is no good evidence either way. Persecution is used in theology, not in arithmetic, because in arithmetic there is knowledge, but in theology there's only opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you find yourself getting angry about a difference of opinion, be on your own guard. You will probably find upon examination that your belief is going beyond what the evidence warrants.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Well, you're entirely welcome and deserving. I thank you for that wonderful example of the kind of thing we've talked about before. And I don't know if you've been around when I've talked about it, but when I was in college, um, people mentioned the book by Paramahansa Yogananda.
Love that book.
There may be more than one, so I will clarify for people that the one I'm referring to is Autobiography of a Yogi. Now, I was, at the time, I'd been raised Catholic kindergarten, grade school, high school, and college, and I was in college at a Catholic college. And my response to the idea of reading a book from a Middle Eastern sage slash saint was this: get away from me. Away, Satan, back off, get away. And so I never went close to that book. Probably about 35 years later, maybe 40, I was reading Michael Singer's work. Do you know Michael Singer's work?
Yes, I do.
And he talks about how powerful this influence was in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thoroughly enjoying Michael Singer's works that I was reading in his class I took, etc., that I decided maybe I should give that book another try. And of course, many years later, having read many of other different things and grown spiritually, etc., I started breezing right through it. And I was halfway or 2/3 the way through it. And all of a sudden I felt this punch in my gut and I felt sick to my stomach. And I thought, oh, I got to put this book down. But I knew, I'd been doing this kind of work enough to know this book isn't making me feel that sickness. So I put the book down. I did a couple worksheets. I did some EFT tapping. And when I went back to pick up that book, I read right through it and loved the rest of it and read it again. And so that kind of a gut reaction you had when I simply made a statement is such a powerful tool if we learn how to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I started one of these mind shifter radio shows years ago with talking about how, it's kind of goofy when you think about it, what we're doing here. And at least two different people who were listening got triggered to anger because they thought I was calling the work goofy.
Mm-hmm.
And what I ended up saying was, what I finished in the next sentence saying was, because this stuff is so valuable and we're giving it away for free, right? This is the kind of thing people would pay, or charge $150 a session for, and we're giving hour after hour of it away for free. And it's in the archives and et cetera. And we're giving it away in a way that we're encouraging people to call in and participate live with people who have tremendous practice and ability for the use of these tools. And just me saying it's kind of goofy when you think about it triggered these two people to intense, angry responses. And that's what we keep asking people to pay attention to in this work. What are you doing with your mind? What's your mind doing? And what's it telling you about its wisdom when you're angry, because whatever it's telling you you're angry about, whatever it's telling you it has for a solution, as a solution for you, that's false. Guaranteed. And your litmus test for it is your own emotional intensity.
Yeah, that's the clue. That's the tell the minute go there. And even what you said earlier to Susan B with, one of my teachers, there's no meaning to anything other than what you give it. And so even that I attached my whatever the construct in my mind around the word. Yeah, and it was the word that was used. I'll have to go back and I can't remember what the word was, but yeah, I could feel that's the trigger point. So I'll have to do some
You
digging
mean you mean when I said that we're all playing this game at the same level?
Yeah, you said we're playing the same game at the same level, but it was the same level that was the trigger point. Yeah. Yeah. And I think as I'm thinking, I can feel it already rising again. It has to do, yeah, I
It
don't know.
has to do with what? What are you feeling that it's connected to?
Well, I think it is about being special. And also, I've been very committed to this work. Um, yeah, there's a part like, yeah, I'm just trying to find the words like, don't tell me that, from where I started to
Don't
where
tell me I'm not special.
yeah, don't tell me that I'm on the same level as everybody else. You know what I mean? Given to where I started.
Yeah.
So I
Oh
guess
boy.
there might be a
Oh
part in
boy.
there that's wanting,
There might be a bit of ego right there, right?
yeah, sure. And wanting validation, I think that part for my efforts, that's all ego. I know that, but yeah,
Yes.
I'll have to there's many thoughts that are coming up right now that
Yes.
we'll
And
find that.
you're right on it, and that's the perfect kind of thing to start doing worksheets on. That's why we recommend so strongly the use of these tools, even on a regular basis, because then you're a number of different things happens. You gain facility with the tools, right? You get more efficient, effective outcomes with the tools because you're practicing it and they come more easily. But also the other thing is you you start to think about the tools more often when this negative emotional thing comes up, because now they're hooked in your mind. Is that you're scanning for the earliest warning sign of upset, and you're connecting that with, I need to call a timeout and take that calming breath. But then over time, if I reach for the worksheet process and I cancel the thought and the goal and the emotional blah blah blah, now it's connected in my mind with both the upset and the relief from the upset. So I'm much more likely to think about the tools as soon as I start getting upset.
Mhm.
And so I can apply it either in the mental short version or the full blown written version and start seeing the benefit, which then just strengthens that connection all the more.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Michael Rice has a tool called the mind shifter, which is targeted journaling. And what you just ran into might turn into a very good tool for you if you say, I'm going to do a mind shifter. I'm going to do some targeted journaling. And you set
Yeah.
aside an hour or two for yourself. And you say, my targeted journaling is going to be about this issue of specialness.
Mm-hmm.
So, now, if I say something here and suggest something and it doesn't like strike you and make your spine go like that, then it's probably not the right mind shifter for you, right?
All right.
However, if you find some way to put into words something about how it's safe and healing for me to recognize that this is not a pathway of specialness, that it's safe and healing for me to give up every hope or wish to be special or to see myself as having made progress.
Yeah, I can feel the I'm going to make you read that.
So it's safe and healing for me in all of my relationships for me to give up every hope and every wish to be special and every hope and wish to see myself as having made progress. And if you let yourself write on that for a half an hour even, or an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, you will probably find some really good work for you to dismantle around identification with a thought pattern that's just creating pain in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I can see memories are already coming in from childhood as you even said that. So, yeah. All right, I will do that and I'll report back after all of my efforts and work.
Yeah, all right. And or you can join us on one of these Tuesday or Thursday support groups and
Yeah, I
actually
will.
step through a worksheet.
Sounds good. I definitely will do that this week. I already had commitments, but I definitely will be joining in the future. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome and deserving. Thank you for the input, questions. So, does that spark any thoughts or comments for anybody else listening to Susan Fluak? And what a great example, right? I say it on a fairly regular basis, not as often as I would like to, but I say, please just keep part of your consciousness monitoring what you might be feeling in tightness or tension or agreement or disagreement as we read some of these statements, questions, observations, or as we make summary statements about the core process in this work. And I don't think for a person to be, I think this is why Guy Finley keeps telling people, come awake, come fully awake, take a breath. Your brain needs the oxygen, it needs the food. I think part of the reason he says that is because he understands that those quick little responses, physical tightness and tension, negative, the negative thoughts, naysaying, they're our early warning system to let us know that we're shutting down, that we're rejecting the flow of life, that we're holding on to a negative emotional energy and claiming it as our birthright, and it's not. So Linda, you've unmuted. Do you have a comment for us?
Always. I am so grateful for this conversation. One of the things that I have been looking at in my life, one is I catch myself in it and then I do my work, but I pretty much took progression out of my language when I took Yeshua off the cross. Because when I saw that he was a brother of mine and just like me, it kind of reminds me of what you talk about, the level. We're all on the same level. Was very freeing for me. The other thing that I was resonating with when you all were talking was that for me, I have to watch my outcome. Am I vested in my outcome? That is definitely related to my emotional state. And I'm learning more and more that I keep going back to that wonderful little kindergarten story of Adam and Eve in the garden. And when they decided they knew better and they ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is a tree of death, that they were vested in being right. And if we're vested in being right, we have to be right, which has been so often shown with your programs, is an ego state of survival, and we're meant to thrive. Then I have to have my own way. And you know where that comes. I have to have my outcome because my outcome is the right outcome. And I catch myself in that frequently, and I have to bring myself up short and say, wait a minute here. Let's back up, soften. Let's look at this from a bigger viewpoint. I wanted to share that with you all too. And the third thing that I was thinking of was that I understand now why one of the members that had been in our group who had been in AA got so triggered and didn't come back hasn't come back, with Guy Finley. And I just realized that when you all were talking today, you know, Guy Finley and Michael Singer have a very similar excitation energy about them. But I don't get triggered with Michael Singer because I don't feel any anger or hostility, and it may have something to do with our families of origin and what we were involved with then. But there are times when I feel sort of a triggering with Guy Finley, and I just try to calm myself down and breathe and then listen to what he has to say, because he has so much of value to say. So we all have value to say if we could just listen to each other. And maybe that has to do with the level and the game. I think each one of us crafts, this is only my thought, I have no idea if it's true or not, but it makes my life work better. Each one of us comes in because we have crafted our own life experience, and we need to learn certain lessons. And they're not the same lessons as someone else. So, and we may have come in to be entertained. Well, we can learn our lessons through either being the fool or being in a drama. It's just our choice. I think I'll choose being the fool or a comedy. But I just wanted to share those things with you, sir.
All right.
Oh, and would you be willing to send me that Bertrand Russell quote that was spot on, if you can?
I'll consider it. That's all based on how easily I can find it again, because I've already closed that. I think it was something I saved on Facebook, and
tonight maybe you can, or at your convenience, if you think about it, if you could send that, text that to me or email it, either one. And I would love Faith's email address, by the way. Yeah.
Okay, from our discussion
from our support group
Tuesday. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And blessings. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome and deserving. Thank you for the call. We're close enough to the end of our time that I'll just remind us all that there's a support group tonight. If you have any interest in joining us, it's available through Zoom, absolutely free. Zoom contact information is available on mindshiftersacademy.org website, and separate info page for Thursday and separate one for Tuesday. And I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff we call love. At a certain level of scale, that's all we are, is love, and everything else is false. Bless.